And that's not to say like that it's not, really talented youth that has success under its belt. It is. So he's just going to have to go in a different direction, and it's going to be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks what direction some of the older players go, whether some more follow in the footsteps of Brendan Maher and walk away, or whether a couple of them stay and nail their colours to the mast for another year at least.
Yeah, a couple of more comments here. Colin O'Donnell. Hopefully Bonner's Cashel connections will bring Ger Brown back and Owen Connolly into the picture with Tip. Need to bring these talented youngsters through. I do believe things are settling down with Ger Brown. Obviously, there was those 4 players, or was it even 5, who moved from Knockavilla Kickham's to Cashel King Cormac's, and they're out this weekend. So we'll see how that goes, because Ger Brown is a great talent if Tipperary can harness that, and obviously Cashel too. Are the Tip County Board doing an FAI McCarthy-Kenny thing, as in Bonner just to tread water, Cummins to get to know the youth, then he comes in and does the rebuild? As most people know, Brendan Cummins did get the under-20 job, and Fintan O'Connor, who was manager of Kerry for 5 years, will be his coach in there. That's a little bit insulting towards Colin Bonner, surely.
I think so, yeah. But it is, as we've talked about before, who's going to be the next Tipperary manager is going to be seriously interesting, with Liam Cahill potentially coming into the mix, Cummins having been involved in the 20s, Darragh Egan having been involved in Wexford, Darren Gleeson having been involved in Antrim. So they're not going to be short of candidates next time around anyway, definitely not.
Yeah, and Will says here, Bonner can do the dirty work of having to move on a lot of the older legends. Then Cummins comes in to complete the rebuild. I don't agree with that. I just think straight away you should be able to, like, the right man will be able to come in and turn things around pretty quickly for Tipperary. And like a couple of the players, sure, I was even saying this year, we need to have some of the more experienced players coming in off the bench and start with the youth. Paddy Cadell came in, I'd been calling for that for well over a year, comes in and hits the ground running against Waterford. Now, it's not like every touch of the ball he had was absolutely perfect, but it's pretty obvious. Here's a young bull who's going to come in and bounce off tackles rather than being an older person who's driven back the other way. An experience you and I both know quite well, as you get older. Mark Keogh came in, pretty obvious. He should have been just given every game for the last couple of years, let him settle to the task, as Jake Morris has at this point. So moving on from that, we should talk about Matty Kenny remaining on as Dublin manager. Very interesting that the statement didn't actually reveal how long he's going to be staying on for. So at this point, we just know that he's going to be there for 2022.
Yeah, I think it was smart business to get that statement out there and just nip any potential conversation about him coming into the Galway equation out of it. Just basically completely nullifying that and getting it out there. He's obviously been there. This is 3 years done already.
He's 3 done, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of years. I'd imagine it's obviously for 1 year minimum, and probably see how that 1 year goes and whether they can build on what they did this year. But I think it's smart from a Dublin point of view, and from Kenny's point of view as well, just to have his colours nailed to the mast. He's going watching Dublin Championship matches now. There's no doubt about who's going to be over them. There's no doubt about who's going to be over them next year. That's it. Matty Kenny's going to be there, and they can build and look forward, and Galway can do their own business to the side.
Yeah, and I know Matty's been at some of the club matches that were going on last weekend, and obviously we talked about earlier in the week, Kilmacud bashed Coola, obviously my own club, and Matty's former club. So he'd be looking to see what players are going to stand out in the next few weeks. He is a very, very good manager. It's worth I wouldn't say even persistent with him. It's worth making sure that he does stay on and continues to build that team. And I'm pretty sure that not everybody feels the same about that. But like I've said to you in the last few months, they're bringing through more and more sort of natural-looking hurlers, and to me, they're building something really good there. And if COVID hadn't hit the camp this year, who knows, maybe they would have won a Leinster final or ran it really close.
Yeah, potentially so, yeah. So hopefully, as you say, guys that we saw this year, the likes of Andrew Dunphy, who came in this year. Every year that Donald Burke gets back at inter-county level, he's going to get better. This is only his second year back after a bit of a break. It's a predominantly young team, like outside of Alan Nolan, who's playing some of the best hurling of his career. There's nobody that you could really see walking away. I don't think. Liam Rush had a bit of a resurgence this year. So there's an awful lot of good to talk about, and hopefully Eamon Dillon, I'm not sure the nature of his injury, but hopefully he'll be back at some stage next year as well and able to contribute, and maybe Matty will be able to coax some of the players who have stepped aside in recent years back into the fold as well.
I'd love, like, I see a comment in here from Yerish Stapp. Limerick are so good, it doesn't matter who manages Tip for the next few years. Bonner a solid stopgap. Cahill playing it smart, avoiding the seat for a few years during Limerick's pop. Do people feel that? Do they think that I'm kind of raving a little bit when I say that Tipperary, if they transition right next year, can be pretty close or push pretty hard?
I think, Shane, I've said it to you, the wheel can turn very, very quickly. It doesn't look at what Cahill did in Waterford in 2020. It doesn't take that long. And I do think Bonner is a very, very safe pair of hands. If you look at everywhere he's went, they have improved. Have they not? If you look at, like, Waterford IT were so competitive at Fitzgibbon Cup level for a long time. And I think he won 5 in total while he was there. Wexford, that was not a golden generation in Wexford, far from it, but they were competitive. He brought Carlow up. Fair enough, they were at a pretty low ebb, but he brought them Christy Ring, McDonagh, and got them up to Division 1 and got them competitive in Leinster. He won an All-Ireland with Ballyhale, albeit, fair play, a star-studded Ballyhale team. But from what I can gather, he hasn't done a bad job anywhere. So you'd imagine he will bring some progress to Tip. And I think they'll be consistent. And I think he'll be consistent in what he does, particularly personnel-wise, and who he's using and what he's looking to do. It's given a 3-year term, so it's not like it's a year, or it's not like it's 2 years. They've showed plenty of faith in him. So the Tip public probably need to repay that faith to him as well. Yeah,
I mean, he does have a lot of credit in the bank. The fact that he always comes across as such a gentleman, I'm sure you've dealt with him at, post or after games, interviewing him, whatever. He's such a gent that it's hard. You wouldn't want to, as in, look, obviously I'm Tipperary too, but like, you want to give him every chance. And there's some people that you deal with and they're quite spiky and, can be difficult to deal with them as managers. And you're almost like, do you know what? Whenever you get the chop, there'll be no harm either. Whereas if you deal with to be honest, you do, like, interpersonal relationships are very important in the media. Paul Galvin talked about a certain manager having a bit of soft power with the media and stuff like that. It is important. And like, if you're very good with journalists and talk with them and kind of look at even what Peter Keane did a few years ago. I think it was a league game, but Kerry had played whoever, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was like a long trip to Monaghan or something like that. Someone will correct me on this. And he got onto the bus afterwards, and there's a microphone at the top of a lot of these buses that do long distance, and he just had to thank the fans and all that kind of stuff, and that kind of thing goes a long way. Funny now you're pulling out the big gallon of water, because there's a comment in from the Shellminator saying, "Watch Tip next year. We'll tear through rivals quicker than Verney goes through those 5-gallon tubs of water." Could you not just get a glass or a cup? Now look, no. This isn't what people think it is. This is actually just one of those vitamin C tablets that I throw in there, trying to get the body right and all that kind of stuff. But why couldn't you just get a pint glass?
No refills required here. This baby will last you a good day anyway.
What am I dealing with here? Imagine trying to do a show with this lad, huh?
Yeah, when you go training now and everybody has their bottles of water, there is no fear of this being mistaken as anyone else's bottle of water. Because
how do you get in through the helmet?
No other Egypt would bring something like this to training, I can tell you that.
So with Matty and Liam staying in their jobs, Tip appointment made, does any of this make Davy to Galway more likely? Now, we did talk the other day, Micheál Donoghue seems like the one. That
would be my first preference if I was in Galway, and even outside of Galway, and if I was a Galway player, that's what I would want, because it would bring back an awful lot of continuity. You don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, being honest with you. You really don't. Shane Power with a great comment in there. Staple's sugar daddy Matty Kenny stays. He's happy with the premier managerial appointment, and Callan, #1 hurler in the country still. What a week to be alive. But the Galway situation is interesting. You don't exactly know what's going on behind the scenes. And not to go too deep into it, but the Galway's financial position hasn't exactly been particularly healthy in recent years, which you'd imagine would make a native appointment a lot more sensible. That's from what I would think anyway.
Yeah. CK streaming, Shane, your brother Paddy should be brought in as part of Bonner's backroom team. His hurling knowledge is phenomenal. Can't believe he hasn't even been part of the underage setup. There was some sort of involvement. I actually haven't spoken to him about that in a while, but do you know what? They could do an awful lot worse. So get canvassing here at the moment. No,
it'd be interesting to see whether, say John Devan, who was with the under-20s, or James Woodlock, who was with Drum, or one of these younger guys that's not long finished hurling, would be brought in as part of that. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, Dishominator, who's always good for a comment. Shane, Gandhi job there, drinking your own urine to purify the body. It's not. It's not. It's fecking one of those effervescent vitamins and a bit of zinc to wash it down too. Michael Donoghue, Michal Donoghue and the county board don't get on right. Well, that is the talk. But you look, those fences can be mended, can't they?
From what I understand, the chairman's reign will end at the end of this year. I think his 5-year term is up. So I don't know the ins and outs of their relationship, but it had been speculated that they weren't on particularly good terms. So if that was the case, and Pat Carney's chairmanship was coming to an end this year, maybe you'd think that the stars would align for Donoghue to come back. But I will say this, like, his chairmanship is not going to end until the end of the year. The Galway appointment will be before then. The chairman will be the one who plays a big part in appointing him. So it's going to be interesting to say. And again, that's rumour and conjecture on. So we don't know the exact ins and outs of what the relationship is.
Yeah. So if we were to be a bit cheeky, we'd say maybe a parting shot could be to appoint someone else as manager.
But look, I hadn't thought that, but potentially.
Yeah, but look, we don't know that, and that is very much tongue in cheek. Mark Corcoran, Cahill inadvertently opened out a huge race for the tip job. We've never been so aware of so many candidates for the tip job, and a lot of them can only get better over the next few years. We kind of did talk about this already, that you've got Liam Cahill now at Waterford, you've got Dara Egan with Wexford, you've got Darren Gleeson with Antrim, and we might have Ryan O'Dwyer with Westmeath if a couple of rumours are to be believed as well. And then obviously Tipperary have their own manager. So that's 5 out of, let's say we put Antrim at the top of the Joe McDonald tree, having just been relegated. 5 of the 12 top counties being managed by Tipperary men. And like I said this to you the other day, that it was kind of Kilkenny who seemed to have the next generation of managers all lining up to manage maybe Kilkenny, Offaly, Wexford or whatever, that they were going to be the ones that would take over in the next couple of years from the Cody tree. But it actually looks like it might work out the other way.
Yeah, no, it does look like Tipper kind of leading that race now. And as said, whoever's going to be the next tip manager is going to be 4 or 5 big names with lots of experience duking it out.
Yeah, let me just see here. Verney always brings that huge bathtub of water and a small little mug of organic grapes to training. Slagging must be unreal. Yeah, you were choking on the grapes there a while back.
No grapes to training, I can tell you. To be honest with you, Shane, the older I've gotten, I can eat very little the day of training, because it's like my body is flushing out anything that's in me, and it's like there's some sort of nervousness, even matches or anything like that. I'd load up the day before a training or a match, but on the day of a match or even a training, I'd be struggling to get too much down. Definitely, I'd be eating feck all after 2 o'clock, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and a comment in there from Mark Corcoran. Johnny Enright is with Meath as well. He is, of course, so that's another team that are going to be in the second tier next year. Let me just see here. I think Galway tend to listen to players when it comes to manager appointments. A good few of them lads played under Davy at college's level, and I don't think they would just want him. But then again, wasn't the whole talk that some of the players wanted Davy the last time out, some of those who had played under him? And it didn't.
Yeah, that was the talk, definitely. Strong talk also. So you don't know. It's a funny one. When you're after underperforming as bad as they did this year, you don't have as much of a pull, really, do you? Whereas if you're after, if they'd been going looking for a manager at the end of 2020, shall we say, having been really close to Limerick, and they're saying we'd like X, Y, and Z to help us get over the line, then you have a different clout. Whereas I don't think you have half as much clout now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we want to keep those comments coming in, because there's an awful lot more to talk about in terms of like who's going to fill those managerial posts in Galway, in Westmeath. Just talk a little bit more about Matty Kenny maybe staying with Dublin, and obviously we've talked about Colin Bonner. But we do want to talk about the best number 11 in GAA history. So what I'm going to do here is bring up the little thread where I asked people on the OurGame Twitter account, and we'll have a little look at some of the answers. So just to go through them here. And I think I have it up on screen. I do, actually. Jack Nulty says Colm Cooper when he played out there. Although I would consider him a little bit more synonymous with number 13. Brian McGuigan, yeah, he was a brilliant player for Tyrone. Larry Tompkins, of course. I read his autobiography. He is a Kildare native, but obviously through the jigs and the reels, he ended up down in Cork being an absolute icon down there. And once went and did rehab alongside Alan Shearer. Damien Barton of Derry, John Troy. Go on, talk to me about John Troy.
Magician. There's if anyone hasn't seen it recently, go back and look at the
chop.
Yeah, like there's nothing like it. Like he's actually not. No, the chop is brilliant. But when they played Cork, geez, I think it was 99. Yeah, it was 99. Brian Corkin throws up the ball and there's nobody else in shot. And Troy comes in, flicks the ball away from ball in the hurl, bang, over the bar. Just absolutely beautiful. The sweetest hands you will ever see.
Did he have the hurley in the other hand or something when he caught that too? I have something in my head that he might have somehow swapped over
I'm
hands.
not sure if that was that occasion, but he definitely swapped hands fairly regularly. He was just so sweet. I'll never forget, we played Lustman Senior, my first game senior with Burr in 2005, and the ball came near him, me and him or whatever, and he just let this big roar out of him, And I was like, "What? Sure, I never touched you." He said, sure, you have to shout for something. Do you know what I mean? Like this kind of crack, and you learn an awful lot from guys like that. But he was a genius, yeah.
Yeah, was it Antrim that time where he got the ball out around the 45? I think he was half slipping. The ball came to him, and he did the he caught it in his hand, threw it up, and just stroke orthodox then over the bar.
Yeah, and he did. It was against Antrim as well. I think it was Antrim in All Ireland quarter final where he chop flicked the ball off the ground as well. He was a genius. Even when Brian Whelan went full forward in '98. John Trice standing out at a sideline and Sid is moving about 20 yards away from him, and he just like straight into his hand off the ground, like just perfect. But yeah, so many, like an unbelievable highlight reel. Played in goals for the minors as well. But just so talented. Yeah, like he'd actually be a perfect goalie now in many respects, because he'd be able to find you anywhere on the pitch.
Yeah, and I'd love to know that too. Who is the perfect outfield player that can transition into a goalie? Because we've seen a lot of it the other way around. Owen Kelly started off as a sub goalie for Tip.
Noel McGrath would transition to a keeper now, perfect, especially towards the end of his days with Tip. And imagine he'd be playing in goals. I remember when I was in Our Ladies in Templemore doing teaching practice, they said that Noel played Harty Cup when he was in first year. Might get somebody to verify that, but I think he was in goals in first year. Which would be unbelievable. Imagine playing Harty at 12 or 13, like that's just ridiculous.
We've got a few more comments in here. Pure Hatchet says Shefflin at 11, end of story. I'm sure others would agree with that.
Pure Hatchet should know a lot about number 11s, because at the end of the day, back in the day, that was what you wanted a lot of the time.
Stop the centre back, sure.
Yeah, pure Hatchet, man. And that's not any disrespect to John Power, but John Power was some man to stop a good centre back from hurling. Like he was just a pig for work, and he'd lay in on top of the centre back and wouldn't let him puck a ball. And it's funny, we've talked about this in separate debates. The role of the centre forward has changed some amount in the last 20 or 30 years. Yeah. You're going from, with due respect to the likes of Brendan Birmingham that played with Offaly, he wouldn't have been, as stylish, or they wouldn't be finding pockets of space. Like pockets of space didn't exist back in the day. Whereas now you have centre forward that's roaming into space. It's a completely different role now. Compare Keane Lynch's role to, we'll say, John Power's role. Like they are poles apart. It's like chalk and cheese.
Yeah. Tis no more about just, we need to soften that centre back a small
bit. But they don't puck down the ball on top of the centre back, Shane. So you don't need that big 6'2" or 6'3", 15-stone lad who's going to walk on your feet and just throw arms and elbows back into your face. You need a ball player now, centre forward, really.
Yeah, Grode Hegarty might have been used differently back in the day as a centre forward, as sort of a smash him up centre forward. But obviously, look, we're seeing what he's doing these days. It's quite different. PJ O'Connell from Clare says Traumspieler, reliable 3 or 4 points a game, Maverick, and obviously just the coolest run ever.
Was PJ not wing forward?
Nah, he was centre forward all day, sure.
Was he centre forward all day? Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, look, we'll have a few of the regular Clare commenters, Patrick Hickey and maybe Adrian McGrath, will come in and soften our cough a small bit, like a good centre forward would have back in the day. Keane Lynch, better hurler than Shefflin in my book, says Flash. John Troy, probably the original wristy hurler, genius, says Joe Butler. Shefflin wishes he had the skill of Lynch. That's wow, that's fighting talk there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, in fairness. They're different types of hurlers. Keane Lynch is, what is he, about 5'10" or 5'11"? Shefflin's about 6'3" or 6'4". They bring different things to the table. I'd always say, like if you're talking about the total package, I would say Henry is like John Higgins as a snooker player. He's unbelievably high in every department. He probably doesn't hit a 10 out of 10 in any department, but he's unbelievably high in every department. Keane Lynch, it'd be interesting to, go through 10 different categories. Yeah, go through 10 different categories, be it, their tackling, their link play, their ball winning ability, and rate the two of them. But it has to be said, there were different roles. When Henry was playing centre forward, it was a much different role than Keane Lynch. And you don't see much high ball coming down on top of Keane Lynch now, whereas Henry would have had plenty of ball down on top of him. Even though you wouldn't have said he was the best in the air, he was still well good enough to win plenty of them.
Yeah, and obviously the 2012 All-Ireland second half against Galway snapped on a ball that I think stood out to everybody. Pure hatchet, I agree, Lynch is a better hurler, but Shefflin did it all over such a long period. TDFH 95, Keane still has to learn how to hand pass properly. That is a topic we wanted to come with a couple of weeks ago. And I remember the Liam Cahill story broke, so we never got to talk about the hand passes. We will be doing that sometime soon. John Troy was an artist on the pitch, gifted, says James Daly. Lots of talk about Keane Lynch. CK streaming, Declan Ryan, greatest centre forward ever, not up for debate. Serious Paris. He was some serious detail. Like, he's the sort of guy who would have lifted the crowd. And a few other of those are like that too.
He moved into full forward at the end of his career, did he? He was flanked, wasn't he flanked by Lar and Owen Kelly?
Yeah, Lar one side, Owen the other.
It's not bad. Like, that's when you're talking, we picked the best 15 not to win in All Ireland. That's some balance to a full forward line. Having those two lads in the corner and then having this big kind of bulwark full forward, like.
Shane Power, I know there probably won't be any Dacia players in the top 3 or 5 number 11s, but interested to know who you think is the best Waterford 11 ever. Like, Ken McGrath was there for 6 or 7 years. You'd do well to best him.
Yeah, would Jamie Prender have played centre forward or wing forward? Is it mostly wing forward?
No, he definitely played centre as well, as far as I know. But like full forward, like anywhere, I mean, that's the measure of the man. You could throw him in there anywhere. Like, competitors are often that way. A
lot of the Waterford lads were kind of interchangeable in the forward line, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You had Prendergast, Dan Shanahan, Paul Flynn, Owen Kelly, who could have played anywhere across those kind of 3 positions in the half forward line, and some of them could go in the full forward line. Gary Kirby's a good shout from Flash as well. Yeah, he's I'd say Gary Kirby's definitely the best centre forward not to win All Ireland anyway. I'd say.
Yeah, geez, well, there's a question, but is it Ken McGrath?
Yeah,
That's for softening your cough.
Yeah, no, but we actually did. We go through the last day who was the best player never to win All Ireland. Like, number 1, we'll have to go through that another day because that's a debate. That's a good debate.
Yeah, look, that's just looking for a row, and we're not going to agree. Ollie Moran is mentioned here. Bonner Maher is mentioned here. Again, Declan Ryan comes up. Manage games and the players around him as good as anyone who ever picked up a stick. The only one who could take Shawnee McMahon to school. Porrick Joyce of football. And Gary Kirby in hurling. John Carroll, a right stopper. PJ was a number 11, top class player. Tony Kelly, Henry is Steve Davis. Keane Lynch is the Rocket. Now, there's a good comment from Porrick Gill. Ken McGrath's mentioned Conor Lahan, Tony Kelly and TJ Reid have played there a few times. Martin Quigley is also mentioned. What position do you reckon Keane Lynch would have played in Shefflin's era? Midfield, like a Cha Fitz, maybe? Wow, that is an unbelievable question there, because you really could play him anywhere. Jaff Allen, football. Time Kieran Carey, best to never win in All Ireland. Trevor Giles, he was absolutely iconic back in the day. Just even to go back to the comments on Twitter also, Jaff Allen is mentioned there. Greg Blaney, the King, obviously referring to Shefflin. Declan O'Sullivan or Kieran McDonald. Ken McGrath, Larry Tompkins, Declan O'Sullivan again, Declan Ryan, Ken McGrath. A lot of these same names are coming up over and over again. Aidan O'Shea, do people agree with that one? Wonder what position he'd be playing in the All-Ireland final this weekend. Tom Chasty, he's a Waterford legend. Shefflin, Keane Lynch, Fingers O'Connell, Lynch, McDonald, Larry Tompkins, Keane Lynch, and Greg Blaney is the last one mentioned there. So it's a lot of the same numbers keep coming in over and over again, Michael. So
funny, Joe Canning's not mentioned in that number 11 debate.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, do people just still kind of romanticize him at number 14?
Yeah, potentially. Like, to me, his best hurling at Galway was at centre forward and towards the latter stage of his career. And I think it's interesting that Joe Cooney's not mentioned there as well. Like, his half in the 1990 All Ireland final, his first half, I think he scored 1-5. That was predominantly from centre forward. Absolutely outstanding. I'd definitely be having those two in the equation as well. Shefflin played obviously predominantly at 11, but also played 10, 12 and 14 at different times as well. He played corner forward against us actually in 08 in the Leinster semi-final too. So it's funny, it's how it's even Keane Lynch at 11 now. We're like, Keane Lynch has only been playing centre forward for Limerick for 2 years. Yeah. And he didn't start their first game last year at centre forward. He started at midfield. It was only against Tip that I remember even hearing Ian Sheedy talk about that they were prepared for Keane Lynch at midfield, and then all of a sudden he goes centre forward. But there's rarely been a bigger impact at centre forward than Lynch in such a short space of time. Like, and you look at, he's flip-flop with, like, Kyle Hayes was centre forward and man of the match in the 18 All-Ireland final. Now he's regarded as the best, like one of the best wing backs in the game. It's funny how versatile a lot of those Limerick lads are.
Yeah, but if Cian Lynch, like the fact that he was kind of blotted out of the game somewhat in the 2019 All-Ireland semi against Kilkenny, and Conor Brown did a good job in him, to be fair, that's because you're probably getting caught in the numbers. If you float a midfield area, that's the one place you get caught. Whereas if he's centre forward, and we know, look, he's Kilkenny, he's Limerick's best hurler. If you put him centre forward, there's probably more areas that if the middle is choked up, he can float into space elsewhere. There's a really good question here from S. Lowe. What position do you reckon Cian Lynch would have played in Shefflin's era? Midfield like a chaff, it's Patrick. I think so. Not that he's not brilliant in the air, because he obviously is really good in the air, but just because it's such route one stuff in an awful lot of ways, I think a lot of the space would have been around the midfield area, more so around that time. So I think, yeah, probably around midfield for me.
I'd agree with you. I think you would have gotten a load of ball around the middle of the field, and it was just a different game. As a half forward, then your primary thing above anything else was being able to win your own ball. That was just the way it was.
Yeah, which he can do. And Shane Power has flipped the question on its head, saying, where would Henry Shefflin fit in the current Limerick team, if anywhere at all?
Will you stop?
Well, look, I didn't say that. That's what Shane Power is saying.
If anywhere at all, Jesus. Yeah.
Sure, if he was on one leg, you'd put him in the current team. It doesn't matter how well the likes of Seamus Flanagan are playing or scoring.
You're dead right. You're dead right. If he was on one leg, he'd offer more than most on one leg. Where would I put him on that current Limerick team? I'd probably move Lynch back out to the middle of the field, if I'm honest.
Yeah, playing centre forward.
He's still, probably would. Yeah, he's still a hurler of the year.
I play him full forward.
You play Shefflin full forward.
Yeah, full forward and roam where you like. Call a switch if you like. I mean, that is the one thing about that half forward line of Limerick, though. Would you play Tom Morrissey, Grode Hegarty, or Cian Lynch full forward? Maybe. I could see Lynch doing it, but I'm not saying I'd want to do it, but I could see him doing it.
It's funny. If you're saying about putting Shefflin inside, I think, yeah, you might be right to an extent. I think with the way and the ball that they give inside, that you can play nearly anybody inside. You know, like you could see Lynch hitting 5 or 6 points from the edge of the square with the ball that's going in. You definitely could.
Eddie Brennan had a few goals if he was in there.
Yeah, 100%. He'd be lapping up.
Luke Toomey says Fergal McCormick, Cork, they haven't replaced him yet. We're obviously back in the number 11s there. Porter says TJ. Michael Donlan.
Yeah, can I just say, is that the first time TJ was mentioned in this?
No. There was one other comment. Let me just see. Niall McCarthy from Cork, he's mentioned here. Let me just see.
His display in the 04 All-Ireland. Remember, he got that ridiculous point from out around the middle of the field.
Drop O'Donovan and have Shefflin in centre forward with Will O'Donoghue and Lynch midfield pairing.
I was kind of hinting at that without, just because I think Shefflin would be unbelievable centre forward. It's not to say that Lynch isn't like a good ball winner, he is, but you'd have 3 boys in the half forward in the old school again. You could horse ball down top of the 3 of them. You could just hit it anywhere if they wanted to. Nicky Quaid would be manna from heaven for him.
Yeah, and Colin O'Donnell says, before your time, lads, but Joe Cooney, Galway, serious operator with 5 All-Stars to back it up. To be fair, I hated Galway back then, so I was only too aware of him. So
there's a great one about Joe Cooney when Borough played Sarsfields in the 98 All-Ireland club final. I think it was mentioned in Johnny Pilkington's Laker Gale. Padjo said it to Breeder Mullins, the keeper, who's actually still playing now. Some 23 years later, said to keep the ball away from Joe Cooney, and Brian Mullins went over to Johnny Pilkington before they went back out for the second half and said, which one is Joe Cooney? Tongue in cheek, no doubt.
I love it. Okay, just a reminder, we are brought to you by Torpy and the Bamboo Stick. You do get 10% off with the promo code OurGame. I think they might be sold out just at the moment, but do check out the website.
As Flash said, Shane, Garrod Hegarty hit 2-2 with the Bamboo in the All-Ireland final. It's no wonder they're sold out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Please do support the channel. Also, for absolutely free, in the bottom right-hand corner, if you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel, because if we want the channel to grow, the more people that subscribe, the more it's recommended to other people. And a huge amount of people that watch don't actually subscribe. So it would be very helpful if you would do that. We'd appreciate that. Let's move on to some of the club action that's coming this week.
Whoa. Hold on a second.
We haven't picked it. We haven't picked the best.
Hold on a second now. I think we have to pick the best hurling centre forward, and I think we have to pick the best football centre forward.
Okay. God almighty. I was
I
hoping.
think you have to put. I think like it's grand having a debate, but we have to make a decision. Like to be
Okay.
judge, jury, and executioner on this thing.
Okay, are you going to call it so? You're.
I think we're absolutely spoiled for choice. Would you be? I don't think you'd be spoiled for choice in as much in any other position on the field as you will be here.
I think we're going to be like we're going to do these over the next few months. I think every week we'll try and touch on one of them quickly. In hurling, is it coming down to Keane Lynch, Declan Ryan, and Henry Shefflin?
I'd have TJ Reid in that equation.
And TJ Reid as well. Jesus, do you feel he plays centre forward enough over the course of his career? Was he centre forward? Ken McGrath. Damn it, this is difficult.
Yeah, the only thing with Ken is that he would have played midfield for a long time and he would have played centre back for a long time as well.
But he had 7 seasons outside of forward, whereas Keane Lynch has had 2.
Yeah, that's why. Like I'd have no problem. Keane Lynch may be the best centre forward in 6 or 7 years, but I can't base it on 2 seasons, and it's also very easy to get blinkered by the recency bias of what he's doing now. In fairness, it'd be surprise, Shane. It's going to be between 2 Kilkenny men for me.
And you're not going to give John Troy any hop?
I give John Troy an awful lot of hop, but like
doesn't sound like it.
When push comes to shove, John Troy has one All-Star. TJ has a hurler of the year. I must have 5 All-Stars at this stage. Henry has 11. The vast majority of them at centre forward, and 3 hurlers of the year. The vast majority of those won at centre forward as well.
Yeah. Okay. Jeez, this is tough. So who are you going for?
Jeez. I go for the King.
You go for the King. You go for Henry Shefflin. Okay. And in football, I'm still deliberating here. I'm looking to buy some time.
No panic. Football wise, listen, I don't know. Maybe I just get blinkered by his genius a bit. Jeez, I just loved Kieran McDonald centre forward. Like, to me, Kieran McDonald was the footballer that everyone wanted to be. And even Dahi Boland put out a clip there recently enough of McDonald kicking around in a Mayo warm-up, and he just slots one over outside of the left from about 50 yards. Still has it, still playing serious ball even with his club down the ranks now. Yeah, I loved what he could do at centre forward. Be it link and play or be it just floating over those points. So maybe that's a bit of a blinkered view, but I just thought McDonald was class.
Yeah, you don't do blinkered views. I don't know what you're talking about there. I'm going to go like Declan Ryan is. I'm leaning towards Declan Ryan a little bit, but I think just because of how thrilling they were, I'm going to go with Ken McGrath. It was just like they were a thrilling team to watch. Kilkenny were more machine-like, and you even talked about it already. Those sort of like very good at every aspect, but when you watch the likes of Ken McGrath play, it was just thrilling to watch. So I'm going to go with Ken McGrath, and like yourself, I'm going to go with Kieran McDonald for the same reason. It's just artistry we're watching out there, or it's more thrills and spills with Ken McGrath, but it's artistry with Kieran McDonald.
The Ken McGrath hit 7 points from play against G in Munster Championship one day.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Even could have been either that or against Cork. He hit 7 points from play for centre forward one day.
Remember in 2010 when he was, and I'd say he took that one hard, being left on the bench by Davy Fitz, and Brian O'Halloran, who was 18, was started full forward, probably a bit too raw and thrown in a bit too soon. I mean, I'd say he was fuming. Came on and hit 3 points from wing forward, even at that age, his last kind of season, and probably a little exclamation point and showing the manager, look, you should have started me. Which, I mean, in hindsight, I'm sure Davey would say that himself. But yeah, like, do you include that as another season where he played in the forward line? Maybe. So
yeah,
I know whatever he did, it was always fairly class watching it. And to me, it's Kieran McDonald. I see some people saying Kieran Kilkenny actually for centre forward. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a fair point.
I wouldn't see him as a centre forward.
It doesn't play, like, Dubs are very flexible with where they play. That's the thing about modern hurling and football now. Keane Lynch is probably an outlier in that regard, in that he generally would play an awful lot in around centre forward, whereas in the football you could have all sorts of different guys floating around into different positions, and it's more Kilkenny could be playing corner forward on a given day, and he's just going to be tracked by whoever. But he wouldn't necessarily always be playing. Like he played a good bit of football 2 years ago at full forward, didn't he? When he put up the guts of 20 points in championship. A couple more years and he could be in that debate a bit more, but I think you'd be putting him into a forward line and not necessarily into pigeonholing him into a centre forward position, because I don't think he plays there the whole time.
And Paul Kennedy says Ken McGrath 2002, he hit that from full forward, I think, against Tip. It's hard to, with so many games over the years, it's hard to kind of think of it all and remember who was playing where at all these different times. If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/OurGame.